Okay, hi there. Welcome to an update video looking at some of the major causes of unemployment in the labour market. We've been looking at this topic of unemployment in our economics lessons, so this is a little overview of, I suppose, four key causes of unemployment in modern economies. To an extent, there is always some degree of seasonal unemployment. So what is seasonal unemployment? Well, basically it refers to seasonal changes in the level of demand, production and jobs, employment, in certain key sectors. Oftentimes the level of demand isn't uniform during a year. There are seasonal variations. Indeed, most unemployment data is seasonally adjusted. Good examples include sectors such as farming, tourism, retail, especially during the peak times, and also hospitality. Of course, hospitality is a sector that's been badly hit along with tourism from the impact of the coronavirus pandemic. Interestingly, farming is less important than it once was as a source of jobs in the UK. Here's a multiple choice question. Approximately how many people are employed in farming and farming trades in the UK? Take a moment, have a go at this question, and just press the pause button, then play when you want to go through the answer. Yeah, farming in the UK is now a very small percentage of total GDP and a very small percentage of total employment. There is a degree of seasonality. In fact, in farming in the UK, only 350,000 people approximately are employed in that sector. That's not to say it's unimportant. It is certainly for certain communities, particularly in rural areas, but farming isn't a dominant employment sector at all. Indeed, there's a suggestion that the degree of seasonality in farming is reducing, in part because of GM crops and increased use of vertical farming techniques and things, which make farming less seasonal than it used to be. My second cause of unemployment, a second type of unemployment, is frictional unemployment. Now, this is caused by people who are often engaged in a period of job search, looking for perhaps a better paid job, or who are between jobs. There's always some amount of frictional unemployment in the labour market, regardless of the stage of a country's business cycle. Frictional unemployment might also include people who are new to the labour market, such as school or college leavers, university graduates, perhaps people coming back from retirement, and also people who are on very short-term employment contracts. Oftentimes they move from one job to another. I guess linked with this is something that many of you will be familiar with, which is a feature of the UK economy and other countries too, and that's the growth of 0 hours or 0 hour contracts. A 0 hour contract does not guarantee a minimum number of working hours each week. Typically, people on 0 hours contracts tend to be younger, often part-time, women, or in full-time education when compared to others in employment. Interestingly, in the UK in 2020, there were for the first time over 1 million people on 0 hours contracts in the United Kingdom, compared with 900,000 in 2019. So since 2000, there's been a net increase of well over 750,000 people on this type of employment contract. And you think about things like food delivery, people working as Uber drivers and other things as well. It's a feature of our increasingly flexible labour market, though it also does have some difficulties and some problems as well. We cover 0 hours contracts in a separate video on the YouTube channel. So frictional employment, it's always there. There are always some people moving between jobs, looking for work. People who are entering the labour market for the first time, having graduated or have after A-levels. People perhaps searching for a career change. People who might have retired early but now come back to the labour market in search of fulfilling work, or perhaps because their pension isn't worth as much as they thought it would be. And perhaps mothers who've taken a career break, to raise a family, returning to active job search. My third type of unemployment, I think, is critical. Now, in questions on unemployment, if you focus in on structural unemployment, you're going to get top marks for analysis and evaluation. This is a very, very important cause of unemployment. There's a lot of notes here, so do take a screenshot or press the pause button as we go through this slide. So structural unemployment has no unique cause, but essentially, in a nutshell, it's when there are barriers to people finding work, structural barriers. One cause is the fact that people's skills may not be necessarily suitable for the fast-changing world of work. Perhaps the highly skilled workers in shipbuilding, heavy engineering, car manufacturing, um, and other related skills, they suffer from the de-industrialization of our economy as we move towards a kind of post-industrial service-dominated economy. And oftentimes people are occupationally immobile. They want to work, they're desperate to work, but they don't necessarily have the marketable skills for employers. Oftentimes people remain unemployed because of the disincentive effects of the unemployment trap, and we will look at that in a separate video. Essentially, there are lots of other potential barriers to people finding work. Housing to rent or to buy might be unaffordable. The cost of childcare can be prohibitive, and the cost of commuting as well. So structural unemployment is essentially a supply-side barrier to people getting back into work. The new jobs often require new skills, and there's a cost of retraining. Often people can move, have the right skills for the job, but they can't afford to move because housing is unaffordable. It may well be the case that there's some degree of employer discrimination against certain groups, including discrimination on the basis of age and gender, ethnicity, and other backgrounds. And a really key point, bottom right on this slide, is that the longer you're unemployed, the harder it is to get back into work. Your motivation suffers, your skills tend to erode or atrophy, and this can make it very difficult to re-enter the labour market. My fourth and final, in this video, final type of unemployment is what's called demand deficient or cyclical unemployment. Now, this is another form of involuntary unemployment, and it's caused or due to a lack of aggregate demand for goods and services. Aggregate demand, you'll have come across that term in macroeconomics. Aggregate demand is C plus I plus G plus X minus M, the familiar formula. And when there's a fall in aggregate demand, that can lead to a contraction in employment, which can then lead to an increase in cyclical unemployment. Now, this is also known as Keynesian unemployment. Keynes's contribution to modern macro essentially tried to explain the persistently high unemployment in the Great Depression of the 1930s. It's also called demand deficient unemployment. I mean, let's think about the UK economy. Here's a chart of GDP. From January 2007, we see the dip in the recession of 2009, slow recovery, and then, of course, the collapse in output as the pandemic took hold in the spring of 2020. Now, undoubtedly, the UK economy has suffered a deep recession. That will have led and is leading to an increase in cyclical unemployment. Hundreds of thousands of jobs have been lost in the last 12 months, despite the scale of government financial support, including the job retention scheme. And this slide just basically captures some of the biggest reported job losses, many of them centred, of course, on hospitality, travel and retail sectors. So cyclical unemployment you associate both with a recession and also with a period of slow growth. It can also happen. Now, how can we show demand efficient cyclical unemployment using an ADAS diagram? Well, here's our chance to show it off. Again, in an exam, if you get a question on cyclical unemployment or causes, don't be afraid to bring in your year 12 first year study diagrams. It's a workhorse model. It has a role to play. And of course, cyclical unemployment is due to a lack of demand. Well, in the recession, the aggregate demand shifts to the left from 81 to 82. That drags down the level of real output from Y1 to Y2. It also means it takes the economy further away from its potential output, leading to an increasing negative output gap. The economy, when there's a lot of cyclical unemployment, the economy has a lot of spare capacity. There are people out there who want to work, but there just aren't enough jobs to get people back into work. Case in point, unemployment in the UK as I speak in January 2021 is somewhere between 1.75 and 2.5 million, depending which measure we use. There's probably about 600,000 job vacancies. That's fallen. So there's essentially 4 unemployed people for every job. Tough to get back into work. Just to round off, I thought I'd give you a little test. Those of you who stayed with the video all the way through, I gave this to my group this morning. What type of unemployment can we identify in these examples? There are 6 examples. Again, here's a chance to press the pause button. Have a go, and when you're ready, we'll go through. Just press play, and we'll go through the answers together. Okay, so first one, workers made redundant from a steel plant due to a downturn in construction, a recession in housing. That would be cyclical unemployment. Fall in demand for new house building leads to a fall in the derived demand for steel and a fall in employment in the steel sector. Number two, a graduate who spends 6 months after university, presumably, searching for work after finishing their course. I would put that down as frictional unemployment, a period of job search, people entering the labour market. Number three, a mother actively searching for work but unable to accept a job offer because of the high cost of childcare. What do we think? Go for that one? I think that's a structural barrier to employment. It is a cause of structural unemployment. Number four, an unemployed farmer finds it difficult to find new work in high-tech sectors. So perhaps they've had to sell their farm, or the farm's become commercially unviable and they find it difficult to find work in higher tech sectors. What do we think? I guess that's again another example of structural unemployment. Again, there's a mismatch of skills, or trying to marry the skills and the experience with the new jobs. Two more. Number five, people working in aircraft freight businesses lose their jobs because of a contraction in the volume of global trade, hinting here at some sort of global economic recession. What do we think there? I think that's again a cyclical unemployment. This is essentially the idea of the global economic cycle impacting on jobs across the world. And number six, some jobs on a manufacturing production line are replaced by robots. Automation. What do we think there? Is it seasonal? Is it frictional? Is it structural? Is it cyclical? I would argue that's probably structural unemployment. Again, it's a change in the pattern of employment caused by capital replacing labour. So in that sense, I've put in more structurals there than you might have expected. Which of the various causes of unemployment is hardest for government to reduce? Well, I'll leave that with you. I'll leave that question with you. My instinct is that structural unemployment, because it basically deals with the many barriers to getting back into work. I think that structural unemployment is the hardest to reduce. It requires quite savvy and smart and often quite expensive supply-side policies to address. In the next video, in this series, we're going to think about the costs of unemployment, economic and social. Thank you.